I think we'll make the start. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Environment Select Committee. In fact, the final Environment Select Committee meeting of the municipal year. I'm Councillor Tom Bennett, Chair of the committee and chairing this evening's meeting. The event is also being streamed live on YouTube for members of the public who wish to watch it remotely, and it will also be available on Capture. I would like to welcome everyone here to Committee Room 1 at Kensington Town Hall and everyone who might be watching on YouTube. Before we proceed with the meeting, I'll remind everyone, members of the committee and everyone else present, to make sure your mobiles are on silent or switched off. And I'd also like to remind councillors and officers that today is the first day of the pre-election period for Mayor of London and London Assembly elections. I don't think that would be an issue with what we're discussing this evening, but just something to bear in mind that sort of more party political things are discussions are restricted during this period. We will start the meeting, as we always do, with 72-second silence to remember those who lost their lives in the Grenfell tragedy. Thank you. So item 1 is apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Durian and Councillor Whedon-Sands. Looks like everyone else is here. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have an interest they wish to declare? Item 3 is minutes of meeting held on 16th of January. These were circulated in advance. Members happy for me to sign those off as an accurate reflection of the meeting? Thank you. Item 4 is the first substantive item, which is the leisure contract update. And we have Ulash and Emma and Roger here to present that. Over to you.
I think I'm not going to say a great deal. I'm hopefully this is really an update, a little overdue, about the contract which runs to 29 and TLL run both our leisure centres and do some bits and pieces for us as well. I've put a certain amount of information in there. We hope that's a kind of useful and of interest, but Ulash and Roger really the experts are no far than I do. So really happy to take questions. Unless you two want to say anything.
No, there's quite a bit in the report. We've tried to capture the main headings in terms of what we think is relevant in terms of the contract. It's had its challenges.
Absolutely.
One primary one is that we left the contract in 2019 and soon after COVID hit, which was a major impact, not just for us, but across the leisure industry, where everything just stopped. We had a triple whammy really. At that stage, there was also some capital works that the contractor needed to do in order to generate the income, such as the soft play area, which is a big income generator there, the extension to the gym and that. Because of that, COVID hitting, that didn't happen. So that was whammy number 2. That stopped them generating income. And then the third whammy was the utility prices. Those have been the big challenges that have affected the industry. We're not
Yeah.
alone in that. It's affected them across London.
Mm.
And I sit on the boards that, you know, they're all having the same problems.
Mm.
So we're not different to them. We're just finding a way through it. So that's the real challenges. The others are sort of business as usual, as explained in the headings that we put down. So happy to take any questions and things that you want to discuss.
That's very helpful, and I'll just remind members it's in the reports. I'm sure you know, but the contract's not currently up for renewal. But this is a halfway point. We're 5 years into the 10-year contract with potential 5-year extension thereafter. So it's more a sort of check-in point halfway through the contract. An opportunity for us to scrutinise and maybe make some suggestions and review the successes and the challenges of the partnership with GLL. So, colleagues who'd like to ask the first question, Aaron.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation report. I understand we, well, actually yourself and Roger, you organised the cricket day for Auckland refugees. I believe that comes under multi-sport event days where you have 5 group. In terms of the community coming forward, is that allocation specifically for anyone in the borough, or is it through, I don't know, if we didn't get that?
Yeah, so generate community view. The one that you mentioned, particularly for the Afghan evacuees, was a specific thing that the borough was faced with the evacuees coming to the borough. What had happened to them, it was quite successful. We had good, at times you'd have about 30 participants per session all the way through, and we arranged even some game against councillors. Really successful, but honestly, what has happened is a lot of those, well, the predominant evacuees from the borough had to be moved on. So in terms of that community, it no longer fits. But what did happen as a result of that, other groups joined in as well. So in answer to your question, was open to everyone. But the Afghan evacuees were the major, it was really popular with them. But we have plans now to, in terms of the cricket, especially to expand that. We've got things planned this coming season with young Colts, because we don't have a Colts team in the borough. So when I say Colts, it's anything from age 9 to 17, and we're one of only a few boroughs that doesn't have a team. So we're planning to do some sessions to encourage that, and also for women and young girls.
Just building on that, so and I appreciate that the leisure contract isn't our only way of getting children in the borough, sort of giving them access to sport and exercise. But what are we doing, and the event days might be a part of it, what are we doing through this contract to make exercise and sport available to all, so not just sort of kids who are football mad, who will always find somewhere sometime to play football, but to encourage it across all borough children?
Yes, so we have a number of things. We have a junior membership to support that. We also have programs in place such as free swimming for children during term times for under 16s. We also have a scheme for £1 a swim as well during
holidays. Okay.
Children to participate. And then in terms of pricing, as I said, we have a junior event, but we also have discounts for under 16s to encourage them to come through.
And do we know what the awareness is of this? Do we know if most borough children are aware of the free swimming during term, the £1 a swim outside, and the other schemes available? What have we done?
Yeah, so we do regular marketing that we do with all the schools in the borough and through all our comms, just to reinforce that, especially during holiday times when it's quite popular.
Yeah,
I suppose it's something that we could always build up. We could always do more marketing.
Yeah. Do we do it through schools and youth clubs as well?
Yes, we work obviously with children's services quite closely, also with public health. But we also reach out. We've got something to give out later today in terms of brochures. So even some councillors can push it through their wards as well.
Okay, we'll be.
Stuart specifically mentioned the swimming, but actually through public health money as well, we're working, and we're just quite involved in this, trying to reach out to different bits of the community to get everyone involved in sport and leisure. And we're very aligned now with public health in a way I think we were previously. There's some things, specific programs we're running on there. Yeah. Which I don't know.
We've kind of teamed up with some other facility providers in the borough. So some of the things we're looking at is skate park. So we've developed a relationship with the skate park there. There's a girls' session that happens on a Friday evening. It's oversubscribed. So, there's a variety of activities that we're trying to engage in with the young people. And we're working, like Ulash said, with our colleagues in public health and user end as well. So some of our contacts are in certain ward ends down towards Riverside. So we're working quite heavily with the Harry Club team down the Riverside to try and open up facilities a little bit more. We all do struggle with access to facilities and sometimes school facilities. After school clubs, the schools quite often charge quite high rates to do activities in. But we're always looking for opportunities to partnership with other providers in the borough.
I think there's actually, it always strikes me, there's a lot more going on than you probably realise. But if I may, Chair, indulge me, mention two specific things.
Yeah.
So, and I was just talking to Roger about this as I came in the room. We're looking again at community. One of the key things is balance in terms of community use versus paid for, the tennis, for the use of our courts. Because as Roger says, facilities, there's a shortage of facilities. So down at St Luke's, we're doing quite a lot of work there at the moment. GLL manage those courts for us, but trying to make sure that there's a period after school and also on Sunday morning, which is community use only, so kids can get on and play. It's not just people who can afford to pay for the tennis or football lessons, whatever it is. And likewise, I don't know, there's a video up on the website, but literally we've just agreed with Westway that courts 11 and pitches 11 and 12 will be made available to the public to use. They don't have any bookings on them, and there's not as popular as some of the others. They'll be free for anyone to, kids to go and have a kick back. Because again, in the north of the borough, there aren't that many places where people play football free. So we are, we're very aware of. Well, and in south and facilities, but we actually have less facilities in the south than the borough. So we are trying to get that balance right. Yes, we do generate some income from these, but we're absolutely making sure that people who can't afford to use those things get access to it.
That's great.
So we're working on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. My question is the accessibility. I mean, we know Leisure sometimes it's a good facility and we're lucky to have, but it's period to the contract. When it was in-house run, we used to have women only swimming, men only swimming, community run activities after actually the leisure center closes. So in this contract, there is code where we will take less staff from your team to manage. For example, there used to be Sunday swimming session where the local community group will bring their own lifeguard and be checked by you. Then that will be cost effective because you don't have to bring the staff in. What you need is maybe a caretaker if there's needed one lifeguard. The other big issue, Jer, I'm hearing locally for the last few years is there's a swimming session for women only advertised. And I don't know if that's the case yet, but what we're hearing is that's not sustainable. The reason is the session is there, but from time to time, there's no female lifeguard to run the session. Maybe there's a reason the center cannot recruit or cannot get. And families has to go across the other borough, our mobility center, which is in Westminster, which is non-stop every Friday or every other day. So I mean, is there a scope to consider working with local organizations and charities, running services when the center is closed at the end of the evening, especially weekends?
Yeah, I'm well aware of this, and you're quite right. There's a challenge in the industry to get female-only lifeguards for particular groups, and I was involved in setting that session up way back in the day. So we're doing it because there is an issue recruiting, female-only lifeguards. So we are working with community groups to train them up in order to be lifeguards, because there's also an affinity with certain groups with particular instructors as well. So that is a challenge, but we are trying to address that with GLL. And in answer to your second point of after hours, it's something that we do with the swimming club. They do it before we open up. They come in early, but we're just going to be mindful of all the health and safety in terms of it's not just one caretaker, having everyone staffed, because it needs to be contained and managed properly. But the answer to your question, definitely, there's a need within the community. We're also trying to recruit, and we've had some success with certain community groups to actually get them trained up to be just lifeguards in general. So that's, we're doing that, with some success. We have a partnership with Kensington Aldridge Academy as well for their 6 forms, etc., to be trained up, etc. So I agree, it's not perfect, but we're trying to do that, and there is a need.
Thank you. So just to double check, so on the broader point of enabling community groups to use the club outside hours, sounds like in principle there is provision with contract like that's happened. It's happening with the swimming club. It's just about understanding the cost impacts. So would you be happy to follow up with us on those 2 points of progress and engaging community group Blahi made and also the recruitment of the female only lifeguard?
Definitely, yeah, and we know that council is best placed. They know their wards well, so if there is a group there, we're more than willing to consider that, because that's better.
Fantastic.
No moment to add. We've had a recent accessible swimming project that's taken place down at Chelsea Swimming Pool. Really successful outreach to some hard to reach groups in the community, and it came forward from them that have been regularly attending that in the summer. Is there an opportunity to do exactly what you're saying? But like Ulesh said, there's health and safety measures and their ability at swimming to actually deliver the requirements of the course in terms of the lifeguarding. Recently, there's a Lancaster West resident that reached out, and we managed to engage in GLL, and they successfully trained her up and successful lifeguard. And then she was also keen in delivering swimming lessons. And I'm pleased to say that they took that on, they trained her up, and she's now a lifeguard and delivering sessions, swimming for the community.
That's really good to hear. Laura, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Kind of a top up of just that, getting the community involved. People with disabilities. How do you sort of monitor that they? Obviously, there are certain things when I go to some of the leisure centres, I see there are certain things in place. But how do you encourage people with disabilities to come or to feel comfortable or to have knowledge that they are going to be catered for? Because I think you kind of have to tell them rather than they come and just hope the best. Do you know what I mean? Is there any way that you do that? You go to these communities and spread the word.
Yeah, we've got. I'll use one example at the moment. We've got a group that's organised down at Chelsea Riverside, and we're trying to bring a forum together whereby we're looking at that specific target element of the groups that you've mentioned. And we're hoping that will build momentum to show that there is accessibility and an offer that we're able to engage in. But we're at a consultative phase with them to try and understand exactly what that delivers. We run a couple of other sessions up at Kensington in association with Disability Sports Code. We've got a multi-sports alpha as well up at Kensington. So we do engage in that, and we do an activity review, and we hope that we get a good feedback from that review that we're able to implement any changes.
I was going to just say, I think I'd like to know how the feedback goes, and if changes are needed, how you actually provide those changes. And then on top of that, sorry, just one more thing.
Yeah.
As an aside, there's lots of quite interesting new different sports that you're doing. There's like one strictly dancing, okay, but there's lots of different activities, and at the moment there's like a real sort of push for slightly, they're not newer sports, but kind of they've become more popular, like paddleball or pickleball, and things like that. And actually we discussed climbing as well. How easy is it for you guys to sort of just flip into a new type of sort of sport, to place it somewhere and to know if it gains momentum or if it's popular, or how long does it take for you to kind of work on that? Because that's quite interesting. I don't know how.
And so a couple of things on that. We have a forum called the C-SPAN, Community Sport and Physical Activity Network,
Yeah.
all our clubs in the borough, and things like that do get discussed. There's a quarterly meeting that myself and Roger chair with all the clubs. I think it's up to 30 clubs within the borough. And within that, new popular sports. You mentioned pickleball, which is played on a badminton court, which is really growing in momentum. And it gives us the ability to put that in place, but also GLL is a big provider across where new things come into play. They're quick to tell us about them, and these are popular, and they can take up these likely to be. So all of those are taken up. We tried to give a balance both in terms, you mentioned climbing, is like the Westway. So what we've tried to do when we set up, we call it Kensington Aldridge Academy in Cal, basically, Kensington Aldridge and Leisure Centre. We had that, and then we had the Westway. So we try not to, have competitive sports. So, for example, Westway concentrated on tennis, climbing, etc., whereas the Leisure Centre had the swimming pool and that sort of stuff. We try and give a wherever possible complementary sports, and likewise with the academy, they put the cricket nets in, so we didn't put any in our. So we try as much as possible, and that forum, the C-SPAN forum, helps us to sort of take on board comments like that and facilitate them.
So it is actually climbing at Westways.
Yeah.
And we've launched a new session in association with Westway to give people that, because climbing can be seen as quite expensive to some. So we're trying to make that offer more accessible, and we're working with the Westway to try and make sure that they have an accessible end to their product. So we're trying to push that through this programme.
And do you work with schools on that as well, to sort of make them aware of?
I think with the schools, with the climbing, that's very much what everyone active would be working directly with them. With the schools, and they'll be encouraging them to come out. I know they get a variety of youth groups that do attend that club, and they do that reach out.
That's it.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to check, because you mentioned with cost of living crisis, prices of energy would have gone up for the centres as well. How do you manage to balance that with the pricing of the centres to keep it accessible to everyone in the borough?
Honestly, truth, with difficulty, because they've gone up. At the peak, it was exponential. It was 4 times the normal amount. So that's one of our biggest pressures right now, as I mentioned, the utility prices that the operator currently pays for. That has an effect on the overall bottom line, especially with how much income they bring in, the expenditure. So it's a difficult one, but we're working on different measures to do. Luckily, they're coming down a bit now, energy prices, so we'll benefit from that. We're looking at other ways to be more energy efficient. We put in energy saving measures across our leisure centres. We were also successful, as mentioned in the report, getting grant supporting funding to do some more energy efficient measures at our centres.
But I think it would be fair to say that we took the hit so that residents didn't. So, when we signed the contract with GLL, obviously pre-COVID, we hope to get a certain income on that. One of the reasons they haven't been able to deliver the income is because of the massive hike in energy prices. And, rather than just try and push all that onto the residents, and we put up prices a little bit in sub inflation, I think, but we basically, the borough's taken the hit.
So I noticed that we are now getting a decent income from it, but still 300,000 below what was forecast. The report mentions that there are measures being taken, sort of working with GLL to try and bridge that gap and get back up to the forecast. How's that going? Do you think we'll get there next year? What are the main measures we're taking, other than obviously benefiting from sort of slow falling of energy prices? What other measures?
There's a number, and like I said, we're not alone. So we liaise with other boroughs, and so there's a few areas, and we're working with our lead member to see which is the best ones. For example, energy costs. We've had a grant. Can we do anything on that? Potential VAT savings. There's a whole new thing that's showing up, and certain boroughs have taken on that, whereby they can get some relief on VAT. So that's one. Looking at ways to potentially cap utilities going forward. And there's other things in terms of, at the moment, we have a 10-year contract. Is there any mileage in giving an extension for another 5 years? This would all incentivize things to reduce it. And then it's things that we need to consider with our lead member in terms of which is the best option. But there's no doubt there is a challenge, as you quite rightly said, and looking at best ways to mitigate that.
Yeah, there's a big challenge. I mean, the world sadly has changed since we signed the contract. We're due to meet with them because the other problem is it's taken a while for things to settle down again. The numbers are coming up in terms of users back to normal, so that's good. But the mixture seems to have changed. And I think what we really need to do now is to go through the business model with them forensically and understand, the energy piece is hard. Nobody controls that piece, but outside of that, what can we do? What investment? What piece things? Because we would like to get the income back up, but whether actually that number, particularly with the energy situation, is achievable going forward, I'm not sure. But I don't have the answer.
Is there a worry? Because if I understand the contract correctly, basically, as soon as they're in surplus, first 800-ish thousand goes to us, and then they make money on top of that. Is there a worry if they don't think that actually they're ever going to get past 850,000? They just think, well, let's stop bothering trying. To not that they don't want to run the centre well, but they're not trying to look for cost savings, look for economies, and never actually really make that attempt to get back up to the 850 plus.
I don't think so. And at the moment, they're on a percentage anyway. So
they do still, every pound they save now, they do still get some of it.
They're on a percentage.
Okay.
We've shifted to a percentage model,
Right. Okay.
because since COVID and the energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's built in. So any like a good analogy, any power it's a 50% share. But what we've done as part of the COVID thing is that we've said that 50%, because we're in a deficit situation, once we hit the 850, whether we do, they would plough that back in, and they've agreed to that. So we try as best as we can to put pressure on them as well.
Yeah.
And also another example is the margin on the previous contract we've let. They were getting 5, which is standard in plus. In fact, a lot of contracts, for example, grounds maintenance, it's 5%. And because of COVID, we've negotiated with them to just pay them 2% margin. So we're sticking with that. So in answer to your question, we try to mitigate as much as we can and incentivize them to sort of, when they make the money, that we benefit from that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it sounds like there are sort of dual incentives, and they are incentivized.
But there is definitely work to do. I think it's a challenge.
Yes, sorry. Go ahead.
Jim, if it's the solar community project, I don't know whether we could replicate that. This one.
The
One to investor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been there, I think. Have
there been any discussions with the solar community project that installed panels on Westway?
Well, Jim's probably our expert on this. Both Kensington and Chelsea have been sort of Kensington Leisure Centre is very heat network. But that's all going to go on the roof, and I think solar panels are going on at the same time.
Okay.
And Chelsea, they're retrofitting at the moment, and I think that will also.
Not
solar. It's just the heat pump, but I'm sure. But Chelsea, of course, is a list of
Heating and cool is probably the biggest energy cost. The whole centre, I would imagine.
that might probably have been long.
So definitely Kensington, we're doing that work. I think Chelsea's a bit more challenging, not least because it's listed, but we are doing some retrofit work there. So Jim says on a heat pump. So definitely.
The other question I had was just about the estate, and I don't know the estate well enough, but is the actual real estate being used to full efficiency? Are there any empty areas, any sort
of the gym?
Yeah, but the sort of land that they're on that is borough owned.
So in the case of Chelsea, I don't think it could.
Chelsea,
It's in the town.
except for maybe a handful of car parking spaces. Yeah,
Well, I think they're already, yeah, that's where the heat pumps go.
Yeah, more about the
Kensington, I mean, personally, I think that it looks lovely. The design of Kensington Leisure Centre has always meant that the building possibly isn't as brilliantly used as it could be, although we did put the salt play in and rearrange things. There's that bit downstairs, isn't there?
Yeah. So, yeah, you're quite right. When we designed and we built up, there was always a mix of sort of giving it a feel of, you know, good spacious facilities. But yeah, it's a good point that you raised. So in the part of during the COVID recovery, it was a COVID hub using, as the lead member said, that we put the soft layer where we think there's space. And property colleagues and also GLL to maximise any sort of space that we have. You know, we looked at that. We redeveloped some changing room space at the facilities. Do that. We potentially looked at squash court areas because squash isn't as popular as other sports whether that use. So the thing that we did at Kensington Leisure Centre, we put in a retractable wall so you can use, you know, when it's not used for squash, it can be used as a multi-purpose room.
Okay.
So we try and do that, but
you
know, property or GLL or anyone comes up with any ideas to maximum use to that. But right now, I'd say all the areas are utilised as much as they can be.
Okay, well, that's good.
It's a really good question. I mean, I think the building has some challenges, doesn't it?
It's just something that GLL themselves might not drive. They might just be operating within the bounds of their contracts, and so it seems like but I mean, the soft layers is a good example of where we have reutilised the space.
Yeah, and you could add the party rooms that they've done redevelopment on that as well.
Okay. And they've been commercially successful, have they?
Yeah, they've been
Party rooms, definitely.
Yeah, fantastic. Any other questions from this item? No, great. Well, thank you very much, Mayor. I think we had three takeaways there. You were going to give us an update on the recruitment of the female lifeguard and the ability of community groups to run sessions in the evening and sort of engagement around that are taking place, as well as feedback on the share the feedback on the disability offering and the outreach done.
Thank you. And thank you all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think. The road collision and casualty days was the next.
Yes.
Should be clear of this 2022 road collision.
Yes, there's always quite a delay between when it happens and when we get the number.
Yeah.
So we get provisional data quicker than that, but TfL and the police like to make sure the numbers are as accurate as possible. So, I mean, the headlines, Chair, are we're not on track to meet the 2030 target or the long-term ones. Really didn't hit the 2022 target. But then we're very much on the same trajectory that the rest of London seems to be on. I saw a graph just today that shows really a kind of uncanny tracking between our performance over the last 15 years and the kind of London average. And so there is some good news in there, and that the total casualties were down 15% comparing 2022 to our most recent data with the most recent pre-COVID data. We don't think 2020 and 2021 are really reliable. Kind of, we're not really comparing apples with apples if we look at those years. And yeah, we do have schemes in the pipeline, notwithstanding the fact that I think it says in there somewhere there's quite a small proportion of all those collisions that we're trying to reduce are in the sort of hotspot areas. But we have identified, nevertheless, some locations where we think we can make improvements. And that's what we intend to do. We've got some we've already consulted on and are in train, and others that are following on behind. And then the other thing was just mention the motorcyclists, because very often when you'll hear as councillors from your residents, I would suspect if it's anything like us, mostly concerns about pedestrian safety, to a lesser extent about cyclist safety. Very few people contact us to complain about motorcycle collisions, but you can see in the report that they are the single biggest casualty group, and they're also very heavily involved in collisions, but other people get hurt as well, or get hurt. But it's very difficult to find kind of interventions that will specifically deal with those problems with motorcycle collisions. If you want to.
No, I mean, we've had some recent good news just 2 days ago. TfL and the council have agreed to implement the Battersea Bridge safety scheme, which is number 1 on the list there. So that's been after sadly a fatality and a very serious injury on Battersea Bridge not that long ago. And we are going to be getting on with that toward the back end of this year. And as Mark says, there's a number of other roads. I mean, the entirety of the top 4 are all on the red roads, on TfL's controlled roads. So we have to work with them. But even on our own networks, there's a number of schemes which are coming through. I think the general feeling is just that it does take a lot of time, and none of these changes really can be done in isolation. There's often a knock-on, either a banned turn that you have to implement or some form of slowing down of the traffic. It's necessarily you're putting in additional signals. So there is a general balance that has to be struck in making sure that we're making the roads safer, but that we are keeping them functional as well.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, and thanks for bringing this to us. I'm going to jump in straight away with a question on motorcycles. Because as you say, it's the largest group of injuries, and they're injuring themselves and they're injuring other people. Is our view that, or is your view that this is predominantly delivery drivers?
Well, it's definitely a kind of working hypothesis, but it's again, we are let down by the limitations of the data we receive. So we don't get data on the trip purpose when the collision data is collected. It is something we've asked. So TfL have a road safety sort of analysis team. So we're putting that question to them to see if they're seeing it, because it's such a huge growth in motorcycle trips that a large part of that must be driven by the kind of food delivery. Plus, we know that they're under extreme time pressures. They probably.
I think there's also now this development where bicycles have been modified to be effectively motorcycles, where they have electric motors. They're still classed as a bicycle. They just aren't. They're a motorcycle. They're an electric motorcycle. And even the motorcyclists involved in sort of Deliveroo and Just Eat predominantly are doing so under a learner number plate, which doesn't have the same training standards as you would get on a full license. I know this is something, I know we're avoiding politics, but I know it's something that is being called upon by the local MP to encourage all people that carry out delivery as part of their job to be certified to the level of capability that you ought to if it's your profession. I think I'm personally worried about the modified bicycles that are coming through, because they are completely unregistered, uncontrolled, and invariably done so in an unsafe manner in the first place. So the batteries themselves aren't very safe, but then they're ridden in a very high-speed way, given they don't have the braking technology that at least a motorcycle would. These bicycles aren't designed to stop such a fast vehicle with the disc brakes or drum brakes that they have. So,
and the whole, I don't want to spend the whole item talking just about motorcycles, but the Deliveroo, Just Eat, Uber Eats model is that the drivers get paid per delivery, right? So they're taking people who have no qualifications to drive a motorcycle for hire, learner plates, don't even have a license, and then they're incentivizing them to go as quickly as possible, because otherwise they don't make money. So one can see how that would lead to a huge number of accidents. Presumably that's something that needs to be tackled London-wide, if not nationwide. Is that something we're involved in, starting conversations on?
So, yeah, the MP is involved in that. But
well, like I said, I think we need to see the data to support that kind of working hypothesis. because it's not something we're not seeing any kind of sort of secondary evidence to show that this is a problem, but it seems like an obvious kind of line of inquiry. But yeah, we're talking about, in a way, inviting companies to change their business model rather than something that boroughs or even TfL can kind of put in place to kind of make sure people avoid any risky behaviour.
So we couldn't, for example, on licensing, when someone wants a license for takeaway food, say you have to have appropriate health and safety plan, which might include all your drivers have to have a license to drive their vehicle, more than just a provisional license. I mean, maybe that's nice to take away.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. This is a wider item instead. I'm not just about that.
Won't you have license CVT?
Well, they'd have a provisional, but whether we could insist they have a full license.
I suppose the delivery riders are not employed or even.
No, it's like two degrees of separation.
Yeah.
But still, it seems that they're putting themselves and lots of other people at danger with a slightly dodgy business model. Laura, go ahead.
Changing the subject slightly. You mentioned red routes and implementing change is with TfL, and it's not always up to us. How long does that actually take to get working? So if you find a key problem, how long does it take for you to negotiate and talk with them to actually get it implemented and working from
Well, so Battersea Bridge followed a fatality in, was it 2021?
Yes.
Yeah. And they're planning to build it at the end of 2024. And that was following a petition, a fatality, and it being one of our most dangerous crossings. And it still took nearly 3 years, or over 3 years. So it's not rapid, but I think what the officers do is also put these reports together. And I would say, looking at this list, there has been conversations around all of these. So there are pieces of work. I mean, I know where I live, the Lots Road, Kings Road junction has just had more yellow boxes installed. I think it's one of those that could still be improved because there's 2 lanes of traffic merging into one, and then a cycle lanes created, so it's sort of managing the flow. In fact, it's in your ward. So but then the Kings Road Beaufort Street one, the scheme that TfL had proposed would require banning one of the turns, which would push all the traffic onto another street. So some are a bit more simple, the Kings Road one being just a bit more paint on the road, but then you've got Beaufort Street that takes a lot longer. So on a simple one, I guess, Mark, 6 to 12 months.
Well, I'm just trying to think of the quickest one that I can think of on the TfL network, and that's probably a new pedestrian crossing on Warwick Road, just up the road from our offices, which went in within months. We didn't really bother too much with consultation. It was a standalone scheme, and it's about as simple a safety scheme as you could do on the TfL road. There were very particular circumstances associated with that one. I think TfL schemes may have a lot of stages and milestones that they need to pass through, and of course they tend to attract a lot of comments generally on their consultation stages.
Is there any way to sort of override it or fast track it, or say, this is actually urgent, can we just do it anyway? And as a second question, how quick are the ones that are not TfL? How quick can we?
They're much better. No, I mean, we consulted on a scheme at Kings Road, Beaufort Street, the same time as we consulted on the 2 schemes that we have mentioned as having gone in the last 12 months or 6 months. But that because that was 2020, at the end of 2020 when we consulted on that, and we went back to the drawing board on that because it failed at the consultation stage. Because again, we to make it work, the traffic engineers, designers said, well, to make it work in traffic terms, you need to ban a turn, and that wasn't considered acceptable by the local community. So 3 years later, we're trying to design a better scheme. So we're not always as quick as we would like to be either.
So because that was one of 3 junctions that went
Yeah,
in. There was Drayton Gardens and Fulham Road that went in, and Drayton Gardens and Hopfront, and that was what, the same 2.5 year process again. 3 years.
So they were all consulted on at the same time, and yes, they slightly suffered from the lack of the changes to our funding regime that followed lockdown. So I think they would have been quicker because there's two of us who were supporting. We would have got them in, I think, a good bit earlier if we had the money. And also anything involving signals takes a long time because it's not, it's not just the consultation responses, maybe being more of a challenge. It's also all the engineering, all the modelling and check what kind of mayhem and things. So there are other things you can do, right? But you put an experimental traffic order in very quickly if you really feel that there's a pressing case for it. So it depends.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Going back to the pollution data, I understand your data gathering would be limited or relied on either TfL or police and whoever else. But one question we had a discussion yesterday was about, I understand you have the data there, cyclist versus cyclist or cyclist pedestrian. Do you get data where who's at fault?
No.
Because
In short, no, because occasionally if it's a collision where the police officer has attended, I think years ago the police officer might well have put down with their kind of, there's a series of like a menu of causation factors they can put down, like failure to look, and they can attribute that to a particular party or sometimes to both parties. But again, the quality of that data is not there consistently, and I think it tends to be reluctant to say this collision happened because this person was going too fast and the other one was completely favourite. Obviously, when you get to things like fatal collisions, where there are far fewer of them, they're subject to a whole, extra level of scrutiny, where eventually there is blame apportioned in many cases.
is it that was the case? I mean, a lot of no offense to any of the cyclists or anyone, but when I ride on a cycle, a lot of cyclists will cross the signal, or because in order to pass through the signal, they go on to the pavement and then cut through the other signal and go on, and then maps in a lot of collisions on that. But in terms of the data, then obviously your data would just include that as a collision.
Yeah, I think we've got a figure in there, haven't we, on the percentage of
It's 5% in pedestrian collisions with bicycles.
I think there's also an issue that this is gathering the more serious issues. We've obviously implemented 20 miles an hour, and I suppose we don't necessarily know about the injuries we're not told about. So I'm hopeful that there are fewer smaller injuries out there, sort of near misses, let's say, that we're not tracking that are improving. I may be wrong, but I would assume that with slower vehicle speeds, there is a general benefit out there. But also there's a proportionality to the miles travelled. So where a motorcycle is coming up very highly on the pie chart, it has to be based relative to the miles travelled within the borough. Are they actually causing disproportionate amount of harm for the amount of journey that they're carrying out? Because, for instance, private hire and taxis are fulfilling a very similar role, and yet the figures are quite different. So perhaps that's just simply about the quantum of the vehicles on our streets as well. As you could, I suppose, analyse it in many ways.
Another question I had was around things like 5.3. You've got the Road Traffic Act and the responsibility of giving practical training to road users, including any parts of description of road users. I wonder, do we offer safer cycling courses, most cycling courses, are those sort of widely accessible?
Yeah, we provide cycle training to adults if they live, work, or can make any connections to the borough, really. And we also provide out cycle training to school children as well.
And that's through the schools that's provided, is it? Okay.
Sometimes through families, but primarily through the schools.
Okay. And so do all borough state schools offer that? Do we know? Could you check?
It's okay, we can check, but it definitely won't be all of them. It's whichever schools want it, basically.
Okay.
All boroughs offer it, I suppose. All boroughs will offer it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it might be just a point just to get back in touch with all the schools that don't have it and just remind them of its availability. Maybe we do that regularly anyway, but can't hurt to remind them again. Colleagues, other questions after laughing?
I think, Chair, we already touched on is I was about to ask,
the training for our kids in the schools. I mean, when I had one little child, I mean, Oxford Garden used to happen at least 3 times a year. I think Tom asked if that happened in schools. I know Bike Works does adult training.
Yeah.
I attended about 4 years ago. So I think if going to be done the training, I think it's way forward. So at least people are trained when they're on the road.
Well, interesting, not in this report. This is something I saw from TfL actually just in the last few days, looking at the last, I think, 4 years, comparing the council's performance on a number of measures against the London average. And on cycle training, but adult cycle training, that's one number I remember, we're providing training 3 times as many as the London Borough average, which for a small borough.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, well, that's very positive. Is there anything else on that one to ask? I had another one over with sort of 2-parter, but over the sort of engagement around serious accidents, particularly fatalities. So I know in some industries, like if there's a plane crash, you know, there'll be a full analysis and it'll always come out with a series of recommendations. How do we prevent, you know, this happening again? And with the fatalities, you said that there's obviously a serious investigation, but I think in one case there was a clear answer, you know, in terms of Battersea Bridge, building a safer junction. But some of the other fatalities, doesn't seem to be any recommendations coming out of that. If we're going to ever hit 0 KSIs, I mean 0 fatalities, should be an easier target. Do we need recommendations coming out of every fatality? Is that feasible?
Well, I think that the things with fatalities, although obviously one is one too many, it's the numbers are never going to be of the size where you can start to sort of spot patterns. And actually, a lot of those serious injuries, you know, maybe 20 years ago, some of those would have turned into fatalities because, you know, medical technology has improved, and sometimes so the serious injury conditions are where we spend a lot of our time looking. But again, even then, if you really want to be able to spot really where there are patterns, you look at all the conditions, and there are new ways of looking at kind of risk as well. But I think to go directly to your question, there'll always be a meeting with the police, and as they tend to be on TfL roads, a meeting with TfL officers as well, which my team will always attend in the weeks after the collision, and that's usually just to check there's nothing obvious in terms of the road surface or the lighting, signs, and just something that could be put right quickly. And then obviously, eventually a coroner will generally be involved. But what is a weakness in the system is we very rarely see the outcome as a kind of postal authority. So there are like high profile fatalities that have occurred in the last few years, and there isn't really any follow through. But again, that sort of also suggests there's no specific requirements for the road to change.
But it's worth adding that, I mean, we know a large number of the fatalities, especially with cycling and pedestrians, are involved with HGVs, and there's been a huge amount of regulation to the HGV chassis and cabin over the last few years. So now the visibility of a lorry is much greater. That doesn't mean you can rule out every fatality. They're still enormous vehicles, but you're minimizing that risk. And I think also, I mean, I'm looking at those fatalities on Oakley Street and on High Street Kensington, and I think if you are either on drink or on drugs, moving a 2-ton piece of metal around the city, what we do with our signals and the way we align the road is going to have a minimal impact to the harm you're causing when you're racing along Chelsea Embankment late at night. So, you know, there's a lot of these fatalities. Well, some of the fatalities aren't necessarily to do with the road network; they're to do with the behaviour of the people causing fatalities. So, it's just worth bearing in mind that actually there's a role for the police to play in making sure that accidents don't happen.
Maybe recommendations wouldn't necessarily be recommendations to us, and maybe recommendations to national legislation or whatever. Got a couple more questions, but Tim, go ahead.
One of the things that changed in the borough is that speed limit was reduced to 20 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So that hasn't had the impact that we had hoped for so far with less PSIs. Do you think there is a correlation there or not? And also to follow up on that, how is that 20 miles per hour enforced through campus, etc.? Because I can think of a number of streets in my own ward where people are literally just ignoring it.
Yeah. So, well, the report says we've only got one full year, the 2022 year. Normally for kind of collision reduction, you want the last 2 years before you make a change, the first 3 years after. So we don't have that. There's certainly nothing that's come through the figures that suggests we've made a huge dent, because if anything, the KSIs went up slightly between 2019 and 2022. I mean, I think most people hoped and assumed that reducing the speed limits would lead to, in aggregate, some kind of reduction in collisions. But actually, by the time we were quoting 20 miles an hour as a council, we were not selling it exclusively on the sort of safety argument. It was a lot more about the quality of life and amenity, and trying to respond to the large number of requests and complaints we get from residents about high speeds, not necessarily, so just making it feel calm, which I think, and we do know that whatever the enforcement pattern from our monitoring of actual speeds, in most of the roads that we surveyed, the speeds have gone down. On your point about enforcement, obviously that's entirely a matter for the police. It's not something that councils have any control over in terms of actually issuing penalties to people who prevent speeding. There certainly has been some enforcement of 20 miles an hour speed limits in the borough, mostly on TfL's roads, because they've gone to 20, as you know, on most of their roads now. But I think there have been some on borough roads as well. It's the tip of the iceberg, that isn't, because they're not there all the time. There aren't very many speed cameras in the borough. I think they're pretty much all on TfL roads.
Yeah, Chelsea Embankment, what I'm aware of. Okay, well, I suppose we'll have to see the next year's data. And is 2023's provisional data telling us anything?
So I think we've said we know how many fatalities there have been in the first few months of 2020.
Yeah, three fatalities, weren't there? But in terms of KSI,
I don't have that. Okay, it will be. I think we could probably get the data for the first 8 months, probably of 2023. But again, it's then are you? They will. The margins for those will change by the time they get published and given to us as the official data. Hopefully,
okay.
On the top line.
I just had two more questions, but if anyone else have other questions first. No, so the first one is in terms of best practice, because I know it says broadly we're on the trend that's slightly better than the trend of other inner London boroughs and our neighbouring borough of Westminster. But are we looking at best practice sort of across London and other cities as well as people who have really cut KSIs successfully and ideas that we might adopt?
Well, there's the kind of Vision Zero tag is something that has been used in lots of other cities and in this country and specifically overseas. And there are different approaches to trying to identify where you should focus on casualty reduction. If you're asking about techniques for what we can do, I don't think there's anything within our toolkit that we're, it would be great to do if only we were allowed to.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that residents often say to us, why don't you just stick a speed camera on the road? And I don't know whether our legal wants to or not, but it's actually completely out of bounds.
Yeah.
Something that so it is a lot of other places. I think the city, which is charged with delivering sort of safety, would have a greater control over.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's also, we can only do so many projects in a year, so we have to look at where we can actually have a tangible benefit. I mean, we all know a large number of injuries happen when lorries turn left or when vehicles turn left and you've got bicycles or pedestrians on your inside. That's been a focus of work, but it's also just the simple things of having signalised crossings for pedestrians
Mhm.
to walk across a road. We still have a number, sort of what I sort of think of relic crossings that we haven't finished really. They were sort of we may have done one arm or two arms of them, but actually, if you're going to get around the city safely, you should be able to cross as a pedestrian almost anywhere with a button. So there's more of that work to be done, but that does involve more traffic lights, more signals,
Yeah.
more changes to the road.
Are we looking also at introducing Copenhagen crossings? And they're called where you raise the road to the pavement level, which are great for wheelchairs and buggies as well as
We have
encouraging for pedestrians.
quite a few. I get my Scandinavian cities modelled up now, but Copenhagen are the matching material pavement, of
Yeah.
which I can recall one
And
by
matching
which
heights
is
as well. Yeah.
in Tryon Street. And in fact, we've just done one in St Helens Gardens as part of that project. I mean, there's an aesthetic issue that driving over Yorkstone leaves quite a lot of marks behind. So you'll see on High Street Kensington, we have granite sets on Marlowe's Road and Victoria Road and Camden Hill Road, etc. So they're a bit harder wearing, but yes, I mean, we do them. And actually, as part of our improvement to the high streets, we would like to do more.
They definitely work better in certain locations than others.
Appreciate that must be the case. And the final question I had to thank you for this. I think it's great and very sensible that we're listing out sort of our top nodes and top links for accidents, and the very large majority of them have an action plan. But I did note that on our number 2 most dangerous link and our number 9, it says we manage this link, but there's no action plan. So Holland Park Avenue, Clarendon Road to Ladbroke Grove, and Fulham Road, Gunter Grove to Edith Grove. Are action plans being developed for those links?
Not currently. There's nothing that we've spotted in the data that. I mean, the easiest thing would be for us to pay some consultants to have a look at those 2 links and come up with some recommendations. But on what we've seen so far, we don't have a clear idea of what it is we would do to make that.
So we've reviewed them and we've said basically there's no obvious solution to science. Yeah, so I mean
But I think it's the fact that all sort of, it's almost like we've got every main road going through the borough is represented on here. In a way, would have been more convenient, administratively, if although not great for people using that road. If one road was noticeably worse than others, then you could do it on a whole corridor.
Yeah.
Like we did on Ladbroke Grove actually a few years ago. So we took that Copenhagen crossings to kind of raise entry treatments to put on most of the side roads off Ladbroke Grove. A couple of years ago, that was part of a kind of whole corridor safety scheme. So yeah, we could take on Park Avenue and the whole thing. It is getting more and more difficult to look at the. I mean, it says that's where it is because of the rate per kilometre, 59 per kilometre. And then when you look at it actually, is then it's
quite small.
It's 12 people, of which 3 were hurt seriously. Yeah, so something dotted around.
Okay. Well, my final was just a comment rather than question, which I very much welcome the change of approach of identifying where we need pedestrian crossings from just looking at conflicts to actually looking at where people are coming from and want to be going, and just a whole seems to be a sort of more putting ourselves in the mind of our pedestrians and making it easier for them, not just safe, but so easier and therefore encouraging it, which sounds like a very positive change.
I think so,
yeah. Okay. Anything else? No, well, thank you very much. It's an interesting item, and we look forward to 2023 data coming out as well and seeing how we're progressing.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Trees next. Good. Thank you for joining us, Angus and Andrew. Would you like to introduce the paper?
It's quite a short report, but it's quite wide ranging. So I don't, rather than to go through it all in all its tiers, I think it'd probably be more sensible to take any questions anyone has.
All right.
Not specifically on the report, Chair, but and I mean, do you have a list of TPOs in private property?
Yes, we do. It's on the website. Yeah.
It's on the website. Because one of the requests that we raised on behalf of the rent, we couldn't figure out whether that's part of TPO. We couldn't get anywhere. But anyway, that's a different story. But we have the data.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
It's all fully publicly available.
Absolutely, yes. So we could figure out, let's say, I don't know, 78 number having a TP.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair. Well, my question is about Wilmington Green. I think there's someone in the room who's more knowledgeable than me. Jessica comes from the area. But the report we are getting as a local ward council on this, the development by Big Board is 3 phases. So phase 1 is gone. We are now in the middle of the second phase. Third to be started. I don't know when. There's a lot of trees. The figure I have may not be back.
We just, I think, the advice is that we can talk about historic things, but we've just got to be careful and careful in the answers to any live planning applications that we can't discuss. But we can talk about the historic and also, I suppose, future plans, but just not live planning applications.
I mean, apologies if I apply. Yeah, is the limitation is the trees. The trees we lost. I have the figure of 200 trees. So my question is, how are we going to replace them? Is it a job of the council? Is it the people in development?
I think that's more general question. Given the loss of trees that's taken place in that area, how are we getting to?
Well, my understanding is that planning permission was given in something like 2010. And so at that point, the plans were passed. And so a number of trees, I don't think it was 200. I think that's strikes me as a very high figure. My colleagues actually been dealing with this, so it's a little bit hard for me to. And my understanding is that there will be, I think it's 50 trees planted, semi-mature trees planted. But I think the danger with these things is that people concentrate too much on the number. Having one tree in a good position that will thrive and have room is better than having 3 trees which are crammed in and will not form good trees. You're far better. People are so fixated with numbers. And I think that's a mistake. It's easy to get a map and draw little crosses where you imagine trees should be, and the more the merrier. You know, that's the general thing. And that isn't the case. And also, just putting a little dot on a map doesn't take into account what's under the ground. The pipes, cellars, electricity cables, sewers, blah blah blah. So it's not quite straightforward as we imagined.
Yeah, but I suppose to answer your broader question, we are taking a more proactive approach. I mean, the report sets out how many additional trees are being planted. There is obviously a political commitment to increase the number of trees. I take your point on it being a round number, but it was an ambition, and that does require, as Angus says, looking at the road surface, looking at the carriageway. I know that our chair here tonight has put trees in Halfcourt Terrace, which was in the road. So whatever happens with the planning application doesn't preclude us from attempting to try and increase the tree coverage in an area. I think there is an issue with the fact that a number of our trees were planted before there were an awful lot of cables and pipes and all kinds of gubbins underneath our pavements, which is making finding new locations difficult. You know, indeed, even on, I think I had the back and forth with James on this one. There's on Holland Park Avenue, one of the fantastic trees that's there has had to be felled, and we're unable to replant it because of the amount of infrastructure underneath. So, taken to its logical conclusion, eventually all the trees will die, and we won't be able to put anything back there because there's now infrastructure. So I think on a wider point, we do need to perhaps lobby, perhaps write to the utilities and work with them to try and actually organise what's going on underneath our feet. I know on a scheme such as Sloane Street, the Cadogan Estate have had to spend millions moving the utilities into the centre of the road, and that's just not something that we're capable of doing in order to facilitate planting a few more trees.
I understand there is an underground mapping, British underground mapping project going on at the moment. Is that helpful? Is that something?
So there is,
Yeah.
although it's a project rather than there's no timeline.
No, it's ongoing. Yeah.
So the government has funded a sizable piece of work towards this, but we don't know where it's going to go and when.
Okay, so
But
it's
we are
not,
part of it.
we're contributing to it, but it's not yet a practical
That's right.
use to us, but hopefully it will be at some point. Okay. Laura?
Thanks, Chair. When we're replanting trees, do we tend to go for the historical tree that was originally there, or are we doing different types of trees, or how does it work? And how do we pick the species of trees?
Well, the first thing is survival. And I don't think there's any question that urban conditions are becoming tougher with hot summers and flash flooding, what have you. So we do try to pick trees that will survive probably what we would have described as a sort of Mediterranean climate in the past. But some of the ones that are the most widely planted one is London Plane. And you'll see that all over Europe, Southern Europe, very tough tree. But say, for example, lime trees, which the Victorians like to plant, we wouldn't plant them anymore because of the sticky stuff they drop. Whereas in Victorian times, they were one of the few trees that survived the levels of pollution. So we wouldn't plant that again. We will plant trees that drop fruit, for example. Unfortunately, with a small legacy of female ginkgo trees, the ones that produce fruit that smell like sick. So so we flogged the wrong, our predecessors were flogged the wrong time. Now we only buy the male clone ones. The only way you can be sure that it's a male. So but there's things like that. So all these things need to be taken into account. So so we won't necessarily plant the same tree.
And just to follow up, but talking of like pollution and stuff, do you plant trees that are, that love the negative impacts of pollution, that can handle it? And
Yes, I think yes. Pretty much all we plant is tried and tested, and I don't think pollution these days is particularly harmful to the establishment of street trees.
Just on that, the plane trees we plant, are they male?
They're all
They're all male, aren't they?
No. I could get into a boxing lesson. No, they're all sterile hybrids.
Okay.
So they're cuttings from. They're all clones. So they're
The only reason
the London Plane's a sterile cross.
yeah.
So it can't produce.
Okay, so because the only reason I ask is because I'm a hay fever sufferer, like many people, and I read something saying it's the male plane trees or
It's
male
the
tree.
pollen, which
Yeah.
is the male rooting body.
Exactly. So
which causes the trouble. Yeah. So,
So
the
the
male
new
part
tree,
of the tree.
the new trees we're planting, I suppose my question is it contributing to, is it putting out a lot of pollen?
It's the same as before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So unless there was a massive program to replace London Planes, which, for example,
Mhm.
would be controversial.
Not advocating that. No, just in terms of
example,
new
Holland
trees,
Park
but-
Avenue,
but
is
basically
where the tree we cut down
Mm.
and haven't been able to replace it. It would look a bit odd if we popped a cherry tree in there,
Mm.
for example. So if we're able to replace that tree, we will put a London Plane in there. And
A pollen producing.
alas, yes.
Okay, no, I was just wondering. Tim?
Thank you, Chair. I was very interested in reading about the build outs on carriageways. So I know that in Breckley-Ford there are quite a few as well. Did you receive any complaints or feedback from local residents on that? Did they complain about parking space?
There's not some, sadly, you see, because we people trees, the complaints or argument come to me. So in fairness, we got all the compliments. Whether my colleagues in highway got it in the neck, I don't know, but I'm sure
We
you
had
can.
complaints, yeah.
We do have complaints.
Yeah, so,
Are you planning to do the other places?
well, the point about them is it's incredibly expensive in terms of my budget. So, you know, it would be 10, 15, 20 times even the cost of a normal tree pit. So this is where I have to try and get money from my highways colleagues because of the two issues of the cost and the loss of parking.
But where we're doing sort of the Amazing Spaces program, obviously we are spending a large amount of money. That gives us the opportunity. It's not possible everywhere, but we are putting in more trees into Chelsea Green and now Bute Street and Hogarth Road in your ward. I think it's 6, 7 more trees, something like that. So, you know, little and often. I suppose.
Is whenever we're doing highways changes, whether that's Amazing Places or smaller highways changes, is there a default sort of option where we always look at the possibility of incorporating trees into that? Is that sort of built into the process? But I'm not saying it will always be possible, but we at least investigate.
Yes, so every scheme that we look at soft landscapes, it won't only be trees, it could be shrubs or so every scheme will have that as part of its scope.
Yeah.
But we don't maximise it. It's not how many trees can we put as Angus said, it's not the maximum number of trees, it's planting trees where they will be of most benefit.
Yeah.
Sort of following on from that, highways, also new developments. How do you sort of enforce and make sure that they are giving us all the shrubs and trees and greenery that we like?
Well, most certainly significant, the large schemes will have a landscaping condition, and we'll approve it prior to they need to start the condition before they can start the development, and we will try to ensure that yet again the correct species are planted, and we don't get fixated by numbers again, and we don't crowd too many trees into small front gardens, and planting is appropriate to the scale of the development.
And to add to that, for example, you're saying that you can't plant certain trees because they're in the streetways. With the new sort of developments and new wiring and everything is going in, do you sort of suggest, let's put it that way, that they have wiring out of the way of the public realm where
well, the problem is that all pavements, we don't get any new pavements, so all pavements have what's existing underneath them.
But when it's a development, obviously they have to update it, right? So they have to add to it because otherwise you're going to have a whole new building with old wires. I don't know.
Earls Court, for instance, has just published their plans for phase 1. Is delivering. I mean, they call it a park, but I would say it's a large garden. But you know, there is a huge amount of additional green space potentially going in, subject to planning, onto what was before an actually exhibition centre and what has been a dust bowl for the last 10 years. So, you know, the planning team do look to make sure that we're enhancing not just trees, but also biodiversity. We have targets now on net gain on that policy as well. So, you know, there's green roofs and all sorts of things going in that aren't just trees. And I've got my own skepticism about green roofs, but they are green.
Yes. Is there a way, I don't know, that we could encourage these new developments, particularly when they're massive developments, huge, taking up real chunks of space, that they could sort of be coaxed into all the local utilities that are under the thing to be moved to the middle of the road or whatever is best practice, you know, so we can then do something like that.
Possibly. The problem with that is it's an unknown cost to do so. So I think developers would probably be a bit reticent about committing to doing such a thing. We have managed to get money in past through Section 106 to plant trees in the wider area rather than specifically on that. Gives us flexibility to we try not to specify the area too tightly because that constricts us from where we can do it. Certainly Pembridge, I know we got quite a lot of money on Pembridge Road from that new development, and we planted quite a lot of trees in that part of the borough as a result of those monies.
I guess that makes sense. Then we can decide we can spend money in the most effective way possible. A couple more questions just on the targets. There's sort of 4 400 or 600, plant 400 new trees across the borough, and then 600 by 2027. It doesn't say whether that is a gross target or a net target, and can we make it a net target? Is it a net target?
No, I think the my estimate was that our target is 400,
Yeah,
and they're completely new trees.
yeah.
So that is.
So a gross
Yeah.
target. Yeah.
But all I'm saying is that the progress we've made at the moment, we should exceed that and
Okay.
get 600 on the 400. That's the progress at the moment. So.
Yeah. Okay.
So we might save 200 for the next time.
But if we could hit it at the net target as well, that would be all the better. And then in terms of, do we identify so it's quite a useful breakdown. We've got the maps as well you've provided where it's small, but where the trees are, and some wards obviously have a lot more than others. Do we identify hotspots where we feel there's a real lack of trees, and then sort of more actively look at opportunities from there, whether that's highway build outs or anything else?
It's not specific. The problem we have is finding places to put them. It's not even a question of looking at where's deficient, because I suspect the south would turn out to be the areas where they have fewer street trees.
Well, so the numbers seem to show that.
Yeah, and that's
Courtfield and
because
Queensgate
Yeah.
to the lowest.
yes, because it's principally because of sellers.
Yeah.
So it's not it's finding places to put them. So it's so we know that there's a deficiency there, but there's practically nothing we can do about it other than go to this planting in the street scenario, which, as I said, is very expensive. So I suspect that we'll probably be planting more trees in the north, because that's where we can find those places for them.
Yeah. Okay. But I think, I mean, I totally understand why we do that, but you will know very well, I mean, the benefits of being able to get trees in where people go past on a daily basis, and people in areas of sort of low tree cover, being able to get a few street trees that they can walk past, has a greater impact on them than people who are already walking past lots of trees. So if there are ways for us to identify, actually, here's an area where people who live there on day to day aren't really going past street trees, aren't interacting with them, and even if we have to spend a bit more money in terms of highway build outs, just trying to address that, and in those wards which are short of trees, and those streets that are, just make an extra effort to try and identify any place where we can get a decent tree. I think that would be very worthwhile. Any other questions?
Chair, can I submit some information specifically that addresses the street tree situation?
So I was about to say, so now we've sort of covered members of the committee. I was about to say, if you or anyone else would like to, I don't think we can take submissions of information at this committee. It's not to say you can't send it in.
I can show it
into us afterwards, but if you have a question, and by all means in your question, if you'd like to reference any data, then please do so. Just I'm sure it won't do, but as I mentioned earlier, we can't discuss any live planning applications or anything
no,
like
it's
that.
about street trees.
Okay, fantastic. Please go ahead.
Going back to Councillor Noah's question about how are we going to replace the
Jessica Johnson, can we sit over here?
the lost trees at Wallington Green.
Jessica, just before you start, just to set the context for the committee, Jessica came to committee in September 2021 and sent a petition about an urban forest proposal for the Wallington team.
Yes, that's right. And just to introduce myself, I'm Jessica Jones. I'm a member of the Wallington Trees community group, and also the 375 Portobello Road Residents Association. And we have been very negatively affected by the Wallington Green development, particularly the loss of trees. There has been a huge loss of trees, more than 200 as part of that development, including a lot of public trees that were in a public park. So 73 mature trees were lost in the park. But I just want to show you this. This is a map of street trees in the area. So this is the Warnington Green Estate, this area here. And as you can see, there's hardly any street trees around this whole area. And that we think is because originally there was a huge amount of trees on the estate that went right up to the building line. So
there wasn't any.
there wasn't any need, or
street.
in fact, it would have been impractical to plant large trees where there were already so many large trees. Now those trees have gone. So we, and there is no more land on the estate. So we are really advocating for a massive increase in street tree planting. That little map that you've presented there, Angus, I think this is a close-up of that, and it's dated from actually 2018. So this is a zoom in on that map, particularly on the Warnington Green area. And since 2018, this much of it is gone. This is a Google map from 2008. This is how the situation is now. So I just want to, really ask again the question, what are we going to do about street trees in Warnington Green? Because the area has been devastated, and there's the plans to plant 50 trees are completely inadequate. All the trees that are being proposed as street trees are small. They're planted 25 metres apart when really they could be 10 metres apart. If we have to create build-outs, we should be creating build-outs, because there are, the birds have gone, the trees have gone. The urban heat island effect in that area is massively increasing. It's really bad. It's incredibly hot. There's no shade. We need the trees. So I really would love you to prioritise that as a policy. And
thank you.
I'm just very conscious you've got members of the planning committee, so I'll sort of speak broadly. And then, yes, I'm very conscious of the situation there. I think we've already discussed, and more changes are certainly necessary. The general principle of putting in street trees, I think that is an area that we should be looking at. Part of our highway maintenance, but also with Angus's team as well, is to make sure that where we are looking especially in areas which have lost trees, not just adding trees which were never there, but replacing those which we may have lost. So I think we've got 2 live applications at the moment or something with them on. They've just closed one and they've got another live. So I think probably better we do this sort of via email, unless there's something you want to add.
I believe James Burton met with yourself, did you know, the other week and discussed the tree planting?
James didn't. I've met James in the past. It was Terry Oliver who came to our meeting a while ago.
I think James was there last week or the week before discussing tree planting, but anyway.
But perhaps, aside from what may or may not happen in the planning applications, which we won't get into, but on the point of street trees in that area, perhaps that's, we could have an update of what can be done to add street trees there. And also just be good, not necessarily in the next month, but into the 6 months' time, to have an update on where we've sort of identified particular areas where there are a shortage of trees, and any sort of plans to address that. I appreciate not everywhere can host a tree, but if we can look harder in areas where there is a real shortage, and whether that's
Portobello Road, for example, where there's 3 trees on this whole stretch.
For example. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Can I ask that I send these to
Please,
members of the
yes, please do. If you send them to James.
Yeah, I'll get in contact with you again, Jess, and so explain to members of the committee.
Yeah.
Thanks, James. I'll just send all this,
Yeah.
Great.
Excellent. And thank you for coming. Thank you, Charlie. Any other final thoughts, questions? In which case, well, thank you very much. It was a very interesting report.
I'm going to get that training market. Even if I'm cut in electric cables myself.
So now move on to our final item, which is the update on the CREST programme. Thank you, Tracy, for joining us. So over to you to introduce the paper.
Yeah, so we sort of do a bit together. So obviously this has been a long running piece of work, CREST, bringing together a number of our services. I think it started with Will Pascal many years ago. And it makes an awful lot of sense. We want our services to be easy to use for residents. We want them to respond to the issues that they highlight. And we want to take away that frustration of residents when they try and contact us and we say, no, that's that department or this department or that department. And frankly, they just want a problem resolved. So the latest change to CREST is really the launch of the street enforcement team, which has brought together some elements of pre-existing services, but also sort of enhancing their roles. The community wardens, which we had funded, really to try and replace the lack of policing in the borough, as well as our existing waste contract team. I think I have to commend the officers. The work since January, since it's officially launched, has been phenomenal. I track the figures, and I'm sort of skeptical that they're even all true at this point, because the volume of fixed penalty notices and actions that the officers are taking has grown double or triple what was happening in the years gone by. So great result. Obviously, it's not just about issuing fines, it's about making sure that our residents have a clean street and the issues are tackled. All the other problems, such as sort of noise and nuisance and issues, have been raised and then attended to. But really, yes, it's part of our council commitment to make the borough safer and fairer, and we want it to be a service available to absolutely everybody. So we're going to improve the way people can log complaints, log issues, but we obviously had to have the team in place to tackle those issues before we open up the door to thousands of new issue complaints. So I don't know, Tracy, over to you for the sort of operational, and thank you to your team for the work you've done.
So hopefully in the report you'll see obviously the report in November highlighted the sort of objectives and the need to sort of merge the two teams and what could be the benefits of them. And then since November we've done some really intense work with the teams to say, well, how do we get you as a fully functioning, a single service that meets the need of the communities? And I think one of the parts of the programme, the transformation programme that I sort of like the most is the one ward with a dedicated officer, or at least one dedicated officer, doing some of the ward walkabouts with local ward councillors, but also with engaging with businesses, because each ward is slightly different. It has a different need. So actually what I'm hoping we'll see is a very tailored community feel of a response, be it a need for enforcement, but also maybe busking, sort of more environmental highways concerns. So we are now trained. There's still training to be done. We're high-vis in uniform. I think an element of why you were there. So it's not just responding to service requests, but actually when you're out and about, if there's a broken paving stand, something else that needs addressing, that they have the capabilities to sort of work in partnership to resolve them. So some of the work that we've done in the report.
So, colleagues who would like to ask the first question. Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair. I think the join up is the good news, but at least we know where to go, because it's true in the past, we don't know which department to go. I mean, when you report the issue, especially fly tipping, dumping, whatever it is, it's been picked up. And I say that, that I witness it, we report today, if not today, tomorrow, it will not be there. There's instances where I don't know what's behind it. I'm more than happy to say the number like is 162 Ladbroke Road. It's just opposite small Tesco. This vertical resident of ours has complained that she owned the property and she ran a business where it was like a private clinic. People are coming in and saying, it's affecting my business. And I've been going for the last 3 months. And this is 3-4 times. It's picked up now. In the evening of the morning, again, abuse. Could be 3 bags, could be 3 pillows. I mean, how do we deal with this? We're not saying the service is not effective.
So there's a specific point there of 162 Ladbroke Road. Then there's the general point of recurring places which have recurring issues, grot spots or places where just no matter how often, how effective we are at picking up that rubbish, people are still dumping it again the same day. How do we deal with that?
So part of the work we're doing as part of the walkabouts, and if we're hoping in the next 3 months to complete all of them, but hopefully the next 6 weeks we'll complete all the walkabouts, understanding some of those hotspot areas, those really entrenched issues, and understanding the root cause of the problem. So we can look through and we can, if there's evidence, approach an issue fixability, that's fine, but actually is it linked to something such as Airbnb, or is it a regular turnover of residents, and how and which do we deal with that? And there's a number of different approaches to that we can take. The important thing is we know that the issue's there so that the residents are reporting it, and that will come up as a hotspot and part of the information that we review. We can issue notices to landlords. So there are ways in which we can deal with the more entrenched issues. The first challenge is to understand what the problem is, and that sometimes we will be approached by a member of the community saying this problem's been here for 6 months, but actually when you look at the figures, we've only just found out, it's only just been reported. So that's one of the challenges, I think, as part of our communications, is saying, well, here we can help, please report it.
So if, just to take an example in that, if it is an Airbnb issue, what are the practical measures we take? So if it's a responsible Airbnb landlord, he or she would only be renting it out for 90 days, but they might care and take action. If they're not responsible, then they won't. And how do we, is it with the FPNs, as I understand it, if it has addressed mail, that's how we can find out who it is and send them an FPN. But if it's Airbnbs, they're not going to have addressed mail generally. So what action can we take on this?
So it's a really tricky set of circumstances. I think we work with colleagues within the organisation with regards to trying to find the right contacts. But actually, sometimes it could be quite simple with regards to educating those people that are using the Airbnb property. So I know that one of the actions we've taken, I think in an area of Earls Court, is making sure that they put a notice on the door on the way out that highlights when the rubbish is to be taken out, and make sure that the documentation they have includes waste management. And that's when we can try and take more action. But sometimes it is tricky.
Yeah, but guys, we can't remove their sort of license to use it or planning permission to use it.
I think that's probably one of the projects we like to look at in more detail, but it's not something that we've got in the bag at the moment.
Okay.
Sorry, President, further to notice that we've seen difference in Russell Road actually. I mean, obviously these are converted into flats. You see it. So they come into flats. I think it's more helpful not just sticking a notice at the front door, but if you have 6 flats, each flat would have a sticker that would each be even more helpful, even more, accountable. I would say that would be there, because I've seen. Let's give an example. One of the door numbers where you had a sticker. A lot of people don't really notice, and you've got change in tenancy, for example. They don't really know what's happening. So if we stick that on individual codes for each flat would make a lot of difference.
I think a lot of it is also societal. So if you see a street with rubbish, you think, well, that's the right day to put the rubbish on the pavement. So if you're a visitor that doesn't really know the rules, it's very odd to just put rubbish right in the middle of the pavement. I know people do it, but they normally will lean it up against a bin or up against a lamppost. And that's one of the reasons we've always advocated for as little street furniture as possible. Because for some reason, people think a lamppost can hide their rubbish bag. But if we can also react quickly to the bags that are on the street, we can stop them piling up. So we've instituted a number of small electric buggies that now drive around the borough, just grabbing bags as they see them, really with the idea that if the bags aren't there, people won't add to the pile, because it's not just a rubbish bag. Someone will put a coffee cup on top, or they'll put a dog poo bag or something, and you end up creating a mess, even if the root cause is going to be hard to tackle. We just have to report and get the stuff off the street as quickly as possible.
There's various things, and there's a good article on the BBC about it the other day about the sort of psychology of signage, and some signs work and some signs don't work, and why. And I just wonder, now we're issuing a lot more FPN, so there's very similar to Abdullahi's case, there's one in my ward on Bolton Gardens, where people just, it gets reported, it gets picked up effectively, but then the next day there's more, and we put a sign up saying, the maximum fine is X, and you can be fined. It hasn't made any difference. I wonder whether it's worth trying new types of signage, saying we have issued 10 fines in this area over the last month. Unfortunately, we can't name the people, though I'd love to. But just sort of a slightly different psychological approach, and people are actually being fined. Is that something we're looking at?
So, I mean, my anti-sign heckles go up whenever we talk about adding more things. But I mean, in principle, yes, we can certainly look at the way we do our signage to make sure it is impactful. I think one of the biggest impacts is actually word of mouth. So surprisingly, I even had a friend come to me and say, "Oh, did you know KNC are now issuing fines for rubbish?" And I thought, yes, I did know that. But it means A, that either they've been caught, or B, that word is getting out, or both, or B's word is getting out that this is something we're doing, and people will think twice. Indeed, I've seen people actively peeling their names off of the rubbish on the pavement whilst I was busy talking to somebody the other day. But the moment they were sort of told off, they took their rubbish back inside. So you need to be on the street, you need to catch people in the act, you need to make sure that we have that street presence so that residents are reassured that they don't have to take matters into their own hands, that we do have this high visibility service out and about. But yes, the signage point, I think, worth a go. I know there's signs other boroughs have done saying, I don't know if it's fit for this chamber, but it's things like "Don't be a tosser" and things like that have been put in public parks. And actually, why not? It's really antisocial what these people are doing.
I think that would be a good thing to look at, and also taking advantage of spreading the message on how we're getting a lot tougher on issuing fines. Tim.
Similarly, under signs, I don't advocate change every sign across the borough, but when new signs are being issued, would it be worth adding the contact details of street light on there so that other residents actually know who to contact when they themselves see an issue?
Very good idea.
A quick thing on the signing. We do have initiatives every now and then where signs will be up for 1 month because signs lose their effect after period. So we'll talk to our comms people and it'll be a 3-week. So typically be a 3-week sign, put it up and take it away again. So we don't have that link with all this involved.
Because we're trying to break the we're trying to eliminate the problem, aren't we? Okay, that makes sense. Other questions? I have a couple more. Tim, go ahead.
Street lighting being advertised to local residents, how do they know about the new service and where to contact? What's being done?
So we've got a bit of comm strategy going on at the moment. So we've got the website that's just gone live that we'll be adding to as well, but that's got the key reporting items. We're doing sort of public events where we can at the moment. So and when we're out on the street and engaging, that's something we're doing. We've also got I've ordered today some calling cards so that when officers are out and about in the street as well, when we're engaging with members of the public, we're making sure that they're aware of how to report it. So essentially, we're starting now. Now we're sort of gone through a bit more transformation. We're ready. It's about ensuring that people are reporting, because otherwise it's not fair. So, and that will continue actually. And we'll be a bit more aggressive about making sure that residents. I think we've got a number of associations that we're going out to and doing a talk to and introducing the team and so it's
I think that's a good point. That's really good to hear. And at times when there's particular streets which are having issues, it's not a bad idea to leaflet them. I mean, I know I was speaking to residents in one of the streets in my ward where they have a lot of Airbnbs, and so they have a lot of rubbish dumping problems. And they were feeling, their initial starting point was, RBKC doesn't care, you're not doing anything about it. And then I started telling them about all the things we are doing about it and how Streetline is a very good service and reactive. And most people there hadn't ever reported anything before. So I think, yeah, spreading that message and telling people what we are doing and how they can call up and get in touch is a really positive thing to do. And on a street like that, in this case it's Ifield Road, leafleting everyone, I think would be well received. People would appreciate that. And we can mention how many more fines we've issued over the last couple of months as well. I had a question about ASB and interlinking with the Met Police, which is mentioned. And I just wonder what impact we've had in that regard. Have the officers been able to address social behaviour, and have we had good buy-in from the police in terms of liaising with us and sharing information in both directions?
So, if that's okay. So I suppose the new policing plan is also quite new, and the officers are quite new as well. And the uplift, we attend a weekly partnership meeting to highlight some of the areas of concern. But we started doing some tent events with the police. So we're on the beginning of that journey. We have done lots of crime prevention work with them around the markets and the businesses in some areas, because it's sort of month of action at the moment. And I think once we start doing our ward walkabouts, we're making sure we're inviting our local ward sergeant and police officers as well. Sometimes I think due to abstractions, etc., they're doing something else. So it's still being developed. It's definitely one of our priorities. We do get information such as missing people, and actually some of our enforcement officers have actually spotted 2 missing people and reported it to the police and to CCTV. So we're starting. It is having a positive impact. I think over the next 3 months we'll definitely see a bit more of an impact that way.
Sorry, just to add one part of having a team out on the street is that they are collecting evidence as well. So recently we consulted on a PSPO for Earls Court, which required an awful lot of data gathering to demonstrate that there was a problem. So we had residents writing greatly, but actually we do need to have the records ourselves to show that we are responding to an issue, not just a perception.
But it sounds like the model that's developing isn't just is good in that it's not just contact at a high level, so the senior officers talking to each other, which is great, but it's actually the people on the ground talking to each other. And I think the fact that our sort of staffing and deployment model is actually very similar to the Metropolitan Police, with one person for each ward, and then the sort of someone to manage the south, central, and north area, and the Met Police have something which overlaps not perfectly, but reasonably well. It would be great if the ward PC and the ward sort of press officer had at least a brief conversation once a week, have each other's mobile numbers, WhatsApp, are in regular contact as it goes, as this develops and the new policeman plan develops. It'd be great to see that happening, and sort of people on the ground are in regular contact with each other. The questions on this. I just had one on a couple of the things which have been suggested as the future areas to look into, and just to really give my support to them. Both the late night services, and I assume that would be more around noise complaints and noisy businesses and that sort of thing. I think that would be really good, particularly, probably not so much on Monday nights, but on sort of Friday, Saturday nights. I don't know if there's any update on that. And the other one is just looking out for skips and construction management traffic breaches and liaising in with that team, because at the moment we do have a problem with the parking officers. They can't ticket the skip because it doesn't have a license plate, so people do get away with some sort of fairly major breaches there. So I think incorporating in that would be really positive. I don't know if you've got an update on either of those, or just something we're looking at.
So with regards to the skips and the construction work, we've trialled that link with the team who will send us a database of what's expired, and I think we trialled sort of 2 wards. And then the thing would go out. It was great. I think I think there were, at that point, we found 2 or 3 breaches, but that's exactly what we're hoping for, really. So we're going to continue that work, because actually, as you say, whilst we're out there, we can cover all of these things. With regards to the late nights, it's good to know that there's support out there, so we'll continue to have a look at what that model might look like. But also in the summer months, there's some work around potentially the summer terraces that are coming up, so just monitoring those as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Liz, anything else on that? No, well, I think it's really useful paper and useful discussion, and just sort of summarise. I think we talked a couple of things about signage, and Councillor Retty was suggesting that sort of the individual flats, where there have been breaches of individual flats with sort of issued notices, and then they said you'd look at options for some more impactful signage, even if that was just for a short period of time, and also incorporating the contact details of Streetline. And then on sort of adjacent to that is the comms side of it, and we're doing all this great work, so let's sort of see where we can up the comms and have a more sort of active communication, both telling people what we're doing and also telling them how to contact us. And then finally, to have the committee's support for exploring late night options and continuing with the fantastic work on the skips licenses and such like, and spreading that across the borough. Well, that's it. Well, thank you very much to all of you for that. And that is the final substantive item. The next one is the work programme. Did any members of the committee have any comments on the work programme? I mean, we are at the end of the municipal year now. I think I just mentioned the pre-meeting, but I'll repeat it now. As we go into the next municipal year, we'll need to set out a full programme for the year. Let's start gathering sort of ideas for that now. So just send them any ideas you have for things which you think the committee should look at over the next municipal year. Just send them in to James is probably the best way. And we'll start gathering that, and then there'll be the sort of brainstorming session in the summer to start pulling together the work plan for the year. But other than that, I think
Chair, can I just say something really
Yeah.
quickly, James? It occurs to me, based on the first paper you had about the leisure centres,
Mhm.
you did mention apparently 8.1, there would be a sports strategy due out in the summer. And the first meeting we have for the next municipal year is the 28th of July. And based on the discussion you had about the wider sports issues, so I think you've got a timely report on that meeting. So I wondered if that's something you wanted to agree tonight, can you see on that point line for that first meeting?
I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, we can obviously follow up some of the points that you raised, but all the different issues are part of that paper as well.
Yeah, no, let's do that.
Okay.
Great. Well, I think that brings us to a close. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.